Well, hello everybody. James right here. Welcome to the show with Jimmy Paine here again, as we have a discussion about the time travel experiments, and at Montauk Camp Hero facility, and we will also be going into some of the USS Eldridge facilities. So I apologize to the audience for being a little late here. We were having some technical issues with some echo sound that was occurring, and we traced the problem back to on my end, but remedy the situation, I would need to get a longer headset. So my headset wasn't going to plug in, it wasn't reaching. So what we're going to do is I'm going to turn my volume down really low. When it's not going to affect you on your end, but so if I kind of lean close to the microphone, to my speakers, trying to hear Jimmy, it's because I'm trying to keep my audio down so Jimmy doesn't hear the echo, because I don't hear the echo, and I'm guessing the audience members do not hear the guests that are listening in on the live stream here. So how are you doing today, Jimmy? Oh, you gotta unmute yourself.
I'm doing good today, James.
Okay, great. Thank you for joining me. So hopefully we'll have enough energy, because I know it's late at night here, but it's a little bit later for me anyway. But so Jimmy, we'll just push through here. So we're gonna go today. This is actually a follow up of a previous video we did back about 6 months ago, where Jimmy explained how he became a crew member on the USS Eldridge back in 1962, when he was under the command of German U-boat Captain Oscar Schneider, who was Phil Schneider's father. And we'll also be discussing the return of how this Eldridge, which is going to appear this year, August actually, is going to, so we're going to basically, for those of you who have not seen it, we're going to do a quick update on that. And we're also going to discuss how the Eldridge ties into Montauk. I know some people are asking some questions. Why did the Eldridge, which was in the Philadelphia harbor, suddenly show up near Montauk, New York? So he'll explain a little bit about that. And so I got some more. If you read the description here, we have some more information on his bio. He was Jimmy Paine was Captain Dallas, which is what the Aliens movies was based out of. He was actually on the Nostromo. He worked with the Tall White Warriors at Area 51 and participated in time travel missions with the Montauk Boys at Camp Hero. So he's also been on Mars, Titan, the Moon, and so he was on the Vandenberg Air Force mission with the Lunar Apollo 20. That was with William Rutledge, and they discovered an Oriental-looking humanoid named EBE Mona Lisa. Jimmy claims the Apollo 20 footage on YouTube is real. So, and there's lots more. I think you've also met the Predator creature. We had a discussion about the Mel's Hole and all that. So, Jimmy, you've been getting around a little bit with your experience with the Men in Black, the Positive Division. I guess you mentioned. I guess was that ACO Division 6 out of Pine Gap and Area 51. Anything else you want to add to that, Jimmy?
Well, I was actually born into all this.
Okay. All right. So where should we take this next? You want to just why don't you just explain to the audience members what the USS Eldridge is, for those of you who starting from scratch. What is that?
Well, it's a destroyer that the government built during the wartime. Now, when this destroyer was being built, before it could be put into service, it would be taken out on sea trials, and the United States Coast Guard, their job is patrol the shores of the United States territory. So this destroyer was not taken out by regular Navy personnel. It was taken out by United States Coast Guardsmen, and they would, test the engines, the steering, the radar, all that was, uh, has to do the sea trials first. So that's why there's a lot of confusion going on, because people think the Navy have contacted the Navy about it, and it wasn't the Navy that was involved with this. It was the United States Coast Guard uh, was involved with it. Now, um, I first I want to go back a little bit and talk about my early childhood, but I'm not going to stay on it very long because we have a lot to cover tonight. In 1961, um, my family was abducted, and I was taken aboard a craft and examined by what I would call humanoids. Um, they were Caucasian. They looked very badly deformed. There was a lot of genetic damage. And, but anyway, I ended up uh, being taken to uh, Nellis Air Force Base because when you come into contact with extraterrestrials, we don't know what kind of diseases they carry. Um, Similar to like when the Indians came in contact with Europeans, a lot of the Indian tribes died out. So I had to be taken in and put into quarantine. And I had, the men in black saw something in me that was unique. So um, the president, who was Eisenhower then, he had like about 8 months left in service to the government. Um, he arranged for for me to since I wasn't afraid of aliens. Um, he arranged for me to be brought to Area 51 and basically to be raised out there around these aliens, extraterrestrials. So I got my start with the Men in Black very early in life. But when I say around 1962, I was taken. There was a flying saucer at Area 51. It was basically the remains of the craft that went down in Roswell in 1947. Now, this spacecraft was damaged too bad to fly. So, what they did, it could be used as a flight simulator. And the extraterrestrials that were in that little craft were only like about 3.5, 4 feet tall. So, they couldn't put a full size uh, Air Force pilot in there to fly it. So they needed a child to fly it. So I learned how to fly a flying saucer when I was like 5 and 6 years old. But what happened when Lee Harvey Oswald went over to Russia? He spotted a flying saucer, and this one was the same make and model as the one at out of Area 51. So I stowed it, and I flew it back, and I landed onto the forward deck of the Eldridge. Okay, now that's how I was using the Eldridge because I knew the Eldridge time traveled to bring it back in time, and I wanted to get it on the ship where we get this back to Area 51, or get it back, like I said, uh, to the eastern United States where we could, ship it. Um, but that's how I got my start. And when I was about, say, 10 years old, 8 years old, I would say, I went to Montauk, and I kind of grew up around the Montauk Boys. Um, and that's how I got my start at Camp Hero. And at Camp Hero, I was there when all the old timers were there. Jack Pewitt was station manager. We had Preston Nichols. We had Al Bielek, and we had a lot of other people there, important people there. And so that's how I got my start at Camp Hero, James.
Okay, people are here said they're hearing some feedback. Maybe Jimmy, mute yourself when I'm talking. I guess so. All right. So, who are the key players on the USS Eldridge and the Philadelphia experiment? So we've got like Nikola Tesla. Supposedly Albert Einstein was there, and who? You want to explain a little bit more about that?
Yes. I met Nikola Tesla. A lot of people stated that he died in 1943. Because of time travel, I met him. Okay. I did not meet Albert Einstein. I met Nikola Tesla. And but now Nikola, he died in like January of 1943. This is just a few months but before the July 22nd, when the ship teleported back in through time, forward through time. Um, what happened? Some of the men became ill because of the feedback from the radar on the Eldridge, and Nikola Tesla went in there and he turned some screws around on some of the electronic stuff where it wouldn't work, and so he kind of exited the program, prior to the actual experiment. Now, what happened? Physicist Van Neumann was down there, and he picked up at where Nikola Tesla went off, and he was the one that was able to get the machine up and running. But that right there, when he did get up and running, I had gotten abducted just prior. I got abducted in 1967, I believe. I had an encounter with an Atlantean. That was a child, and I was able to get control of that spear, and I flew through time. I came down in Siberia, and they fired a missile at me, and the missile missed and hit the forest there. That's where the great, explosion occurred over in Russia. It knocked a bunch of trees down, and I believe that was 1908 when that explosion occurred, James. But it was somewhere down. It was somewhere close that timeline. I have to go back and look at the notes.
Supposedly that was an experiment with the Tesla ray gun. You want to comment about that?
I want to sidestep that. There's a lot of things that is still classified, James, and I feel that I buddy sidestep that one question.
Okay. All right. I'll just share my screen here real quick. Hold on a second. There we go. So the event took place in June 30th, 1908.
Correct. I was a little bit off on that, but that's that I remember the missile that missed me, and I was on the run with an experimental spear, alien, very advanced. This spear that I took control of is faster than anything at Area 51. We don't have anything quite. We have some advanced craft at Area 51, but this one's really fast.
Okay, keep talking. Yeah. So let's see here. We'll go from so there. So explain how you actually a little bit more on how you got onto the Eldridge itself.
Well, what happened, James? Uh, I had some communications that came through the computer on that spacecraft, and I was ordered uh, to fly down, but by a naval ship. And when I got over the naval destroyer, um, I was ordered to stand by for a test. And when the officer on the Eldridge uh, fired up uh, the equipment, it caused the spear to become unstable, and I was getting a lot of G's. I was zigzagging back and forth. It's kind of like if you take a magnet and you get it close to like a refrigerator and you let go of it and it sticks to the metal. I mean, it pulled me that quick into the Eldridge, and the spear hit just below the forward uh, starboard side. Excuse me, the forward port side, and right below the water line. And I slammed into it and went into the hull of the Eldridge. And um, when I got to the hatch door, I opened it, and one of the extraterrestrials escaped out of the hatch and got into the hull of the ship. Now, I went and I grabbed a laser rifle, um, and I knew I had to, you know, subdue the alien. And when I stepped out of the spear, I saw the damage it had did to the hull of the Eldridge. And but what was strange was the water was being held back. I could look and see the metal all bent inward, but I noticed the water was being held out. And I took my finger and I stuck it into the water and I pulled it back out, and there was like a little bitty uh, leak, like you cut on like a little garden hose. Um, but anytime like I said, I did it one or two times, it was leaking. I didn't do it anymore. Um, so when I left out of the hull, I went in through the. I went in. I came in through several different compartments of the Eldridge, and I had a hand radio on me at that time, and I was being told, whatever I do, don't confront them. Only go behind the alien. Do not stand in front of the alien. Approach the alien from behind. And ended up getting into the kitchen area where I came in contact. That is the galley of the ship, the kitchen. And I went ahead and started firing this laser, and it had little balls of light that would come out of about the size of a golf ball. And this light was real slow. And by the time that the little ball light would fly across the room, um, the alien could just barely get out of the way of it. We couldn't move very quick. It's like I was moving in slow motion, and the alien's moving in slow motion, and the light is moving in slow motion. But it felt like if you got into a pool, like a swimming pool, and you were like chest deep, and you started walking kind of quick in the bottom on a pool, you'll feel resistance. And that I was feeling resistance, like like if you're driving a motorcycle, you feel resistance hitting your body. But I felt gravitational resistance is what I felt. I didn't feel any water. I didn't feel any wind, but it's like a gravitational drag, and I was moving real slow. Um, but it ended up, like I said, um, the alien was wounded, and I ended up getting him into a cargo area, and I closed the hatch, and it was a mop that I took and jammed up against the hatch door to keep the alien from opening it from the inside. Otherwise, I trapped it in the cargo area, and I managed to get out. Went through several other corridors and found a hatch and opened it up. And when I did, the Eldridge was on fire. Um, it was a green fire, but it's only like about 4 or 5 inches. You could see it 4 or 5 inches off the deck, and it burned like alcohol. Alcohol is real hard to see when it burns, but uh, but this stuff looked kind of greenish. Um, so I closed the hatch. I couldn't get out on that end. I went down a few more corridors till I found another hatch, and I opened it. I was able to get out and get onto the deck. And when I got on the deck of the Eldridge, uh, the firefighting equipment, there's hoses, attached to the bulkhead. So I pulled the hoses off, coupled them up, and was able to get open the valve up to get the firefighting equipment up and running. And I was able to put the deck fire out. And I would say at least a third of the ship was on fire. So it did a lot of damage, but it was more um, with burnt cables, electrical cables. Um, the paint, the steel wasn't damaged, but the steel was extremely hot, just like you would grab a hold of a hot cast iron skillet. I mean, when I the the heels of my boots, the heels of the heels of my boots would melt a little bit. It was that hot. Okay. So once the fire was out, I was able to move from the rear of the ship towards the front of the ship. But I encountered that resistance again. It was just like it was real hard. It took me maybe a half an hour. And see, that's the thing about it. You have no sense of time when you're on the Eldridge. But it just took forever um, for me to get from the rear of the ship to the forward section of the ship. And when I got up towards the forward section, I found a break in one of the cables that led from the generator to the netting on the side of the ship. And it was arcing green. And at that time, I seen out of the side of my eye some movement, and there was Lieutenant Alexander Cameron. Now he's the Coast Guard commander who was in charge of the Eldridge. See, they were supposed to be just simply a sea trial test. And he asked me, he said, look, we got some damage here. And this is a test. And we can't use the radios because it's a test, so it's a secret test going on. So he went, we're seeing the damage, and we're feeling all these gravitational waves. He's feeling it, I'm feeling it. We know something's wrong. So we've got to get this cable fixed. And so he went in there to the toolbox, and he got some tape, electrical tape, and got some clamps, and electrical clamps, And but what happened was I repaired the cable from the generator. It was shortening out on the deck, and I was able to pull the cable up, wrap the tape around it, and set it back down. Well, that was the only break. There was some more breaks on the side of the ship. So Lieutenant Alexander Cameron said, look, we have more breaks. I need you to go to get on the net, climb down on the side of the ship, and repair these breaks because it's still shortening out. That's where we're getting back feed on this generator. So I crawled over, and that's him. That's him right there.
John Eldridge, the junior.
Yeah. Now the father was a little more. Can you pull up the graduation picture, the Coast Guard graduation picture?
What about it?
James, I can. That's not the picture I want, but let me go on with the story for a minute here. What happened was I went ahead and went over on the side of the ship where the electrical netting was at, and I was able to repair it. Okay, I was able to repair it, and I came back over the side and got back on board. And Lieutenant Alexander Cameron said, "Look, we have men that are hurt," and I went to try to give them aid, and they were stuck in the steel. Okay, they were stuck into the steel of the ship, and so what he did, he went and he got. They had some spam on the ship. Like if some of the men got a little hungry because they worked through their lunch hour, and you have to remember this ship was not ready to go into regular service. It was just out for about a day or so out on the coastal area for the sea trial. But they had some spam in the cooler. So we went and we put the spam into a sack, and he handed it to me. He says, "I need you to. This is in case you become lost. You have some food here. I need you to climb back over the side of the ship. I want you to go down to the end of the net, and I want you to jump off. All right." It's kind of like if you see a bird laying on a power line, and the bird is sitting there, he does holding on to the power line. You don't want to touch the ground and touch the power line at the same time. You have to jump. So when I got on the side of the ship, I threw the food over my shoulder with the sack over my shoulder, and I had to jump from the net, the cargo net on the side of the ship. I had to jump into what I would call the sea, but I didn't see the sea. Only thing I saw was pitch black. I never saw anything else. Nothing but green light. And the green light would be very similar if you put on night vision goggles. That's the best way I can describe it, is just a green light. And I jumped off and I came down, and I came out. When I came down, I hit outside the fence of the Eldridge. Well, excuse me, outside the fence of Camp Hero, and it was dark. And when I came down, not far from me, part of the tower came down and hit the fence, and it so the fence was electrified, so I couldn't get into the base, and I was disoriented. It's kind of like, you know, um, the radio frequency, the radio waves, it makes your brain swell a little bit. So I was a little bit disoriented. So I ended up walking out. Kept walking down by the side of the security gate, security fence. I couldn't get in. I ended up wandering down onto the beach area, and I might have been maybe about 3 or 4 miles from the base, walking down the beach, and the helicopters came down. They landed. They picked me up and brought me, um, you know, brought me back to the base.
Were you in 1962 at this point?
Uh, can you move? I want to say it was 1967, James. No, I take that back. It wasn't 19. I was abducted in 1967, but it was like 19. I want to say 1964 is when, or either 1965. It was that timeline. Because Oscar Schneider, Captain Schneider, was asking me about it. Did I know what year it was? And I was a little bit confused because I still had some swelling, pressure on my brain from the radio waves. That's what what he was worried about. A lot of the men on the Eldridge was suffering the same phenomenon. Some of them lost their minds. Some of them was delirious. Very confused. Um, but that's one of the instances I'm describing here.
Jimmy, maybe can you click the private chat tab?
Where's
Click on
that?
private. Yeah, click on private chat. I'll send you messages that way. So I'll just type the questions. That way you don't have to hear all the feedback.
Yeah, I see it now.
Okay. Tell us more about the alien. I want to know like what kind of alien it was. Yeah, why was it there? What did it look like?
Well, it was an Atlantean. Um, the spacecraft that went down in Russia. So you have a 3-finger Atlantean and you have a 6-finger Atlantean. Now, the 6-finger Atlantean that went down in Russia in 1962, the Russians recovered the spacecraft, and what happened was they did an autopsy on the alien astronaut, and all of them got sick. Everyone on that base died. So we're talking about an entire Russian base with nothing but dead soldiers, and they had a fever. They all ran a strange fever, and the best way to describe it was like Ebola. Now, I believe, and this is just what I honestly believe, I believe Ebola is an alien virus because, um, but what you see over in Africa is it's Ebola over there, but that that virus takes time to kill you in Africa. This virus was much more powerful. It's a much more powerful Ebola. I mean, it just they all just bled to death. All their insides turned to liquid. Okay, so what happened was the three-fingered Atlantean uh, showed up, and the six-finger Atlantean was the one that was in the crash, but it was the three-finger Atlantean is the one that went after me. And because I had stolen the craft, I think it wanted the craft for itself to fly to get off world. Now, that's what I believe. I just stole the craft before the three-finger Atlantean could get his hands on it. That's the only thing I can make out.
I'm gonna just type it out so you don't have to hear the echo. Was the Ebola virus an AI black goo virus?
Um, James, I believe I'm not going to say 100%, but the way the Russians died, I mean, they just turned black. I mean, it was just incredibly quick. I mean, that many on the base dying like that. Now, I want to say this: the Russian commander of that base, locked himself when all these soldiers started dropping dead. He immediately uh, locked himself in the office. He was terrified. And when the three finger alien met up with me, um, it wanted me to follow it. And I followed the alien up into the base. And they had taken some more stuff out of that craft. And but what happened? Um, the officer, the commander of that military base, he had a pistol on his hip. And when the alien confronted the the Russian commander, um, of course, the alien was telepathic, and it told the the Russian officer um, that he wanted every bit of the material back. And then it made the Russian officer apologize to him. And after he apologized to him, he made the Russian pull the gun out of his holster, and he told the Russian officer to point it towards his head. And then when he put it to his head, the alien said, "Pull the trigger." And the Russian officer pulled the trigger, and he blew his brains out. The blood, some of his brains and blood flew on me. And it kind of traumatized me, but he was doing it by thought. In other words, if that alien looked you in the eye and told you to put a gun to your head and then pull the trigger, you have no choice. It was some type of mind control. And the alien called itself a god, God, and that it came in peace. But it was furious at what had happened. So after the commander blew his brains out, the alien informed me, he said, well, I want you to, put the stuff that he took out of the craft back into this, this military truck, and for you to drive the truck back um, away from the base here. And I did as I was instructed. You see what I'm saying? So, like I said, the Russians claim it happened in like 1969, 1979, but that's incorrect. It happened in 1962. Now, I think the actor Roger Moore did a segment on it, about the flying saucer, and it showed the alien autopsy, the Russian alien autopsy. Actor Roger Moore narrated the clip, but that was the actual craft that I stowed, James.
Do you see the screen?
Yes.
Why was the alien there? Do you know?
Could you mute yourself, James? My guess is that not only was the alien monitoring Camp Hero, he was also monitoring the spacecraft that went down in Russia. So you have to remember, the alien can time jump. That's what he was doing. I think he wanted it to go off world with it. Now that's just, I mean, no one. This is just something I've thought about through the years. Why? He was desperate to get off world, and he knew how to fly the craft, but he was definitely trying to hijack it. I simply hijacked it prior that he did.
See the screen. Look at the question there.
Did the hoe in hyperspace allow the negative grays to enter our reality? James, they've been here a long time. The grays have. Now, there was an instance at Camp Hero where some grays that I was with got dragged into the time tunnel. I believe Al Bielek might have said something about that, and I think he gave it on one of his lectures. But they stayed at Camp Hero for several days, and that's when Preston Nichols took some Lysol and sprayed on them, and they seemed to get drunk. See, they absorb nutrients through their skin. But a little gray, if he doesn't shower, he can have a strong body odor, very strong.
Explain why. Why they smell so bad?
They don't have like a human defecates. We have intestines. They don't have that. They expel when they're through digesting. They absorb food through their skin, and then they expel it when it's through absorbing. That's why they take blood, say cattle, and they take this blood from the cattle. They smear it on their arms or legs. That's how they get their nutrients. And I'm going to say something. When you see mutilated cattle, that's a good sign, because if it's a wild gray, it's not going to go after cattle. It's going to go after humans. So if you see mutilated cattle, it means that we have a friendly gray around. He's going after the livestock. But a wild gray will abduct you and cut you up.
Yeah, I got another mark. and I got one on my leg too. So, but that's I think these are like reptilians that are doing this in Draco.
Now,
But
now I want to say something. There are like parasites, like vampire bats. A vampire bat. I'm not talking about a vampire bat on Earth. I'm talking about an alien vampire bat.
oh, okay. Well, let's just move on here.
But I'm thinking you have more like puncture wounds. Um,
Yeah, my understanding, I was abducted by some reptilians in Draco, and they have this machine that comes down and it pulls, it cuts out your flesh, and they take it away and make clones out of it. So, not the only thing they do with the flesh, they also monitor changes and your mutations that they're whatever the experiments they're working on. But
well,
yeah,
I want to say something now. No one's never said this. This is just something that I'm in the back of my mind. But when you hear about um, lab grown meat, this is, we're starting to hear about McNuggets. We're going to have lab grown meat, like you have cow or pig or chicken. Basically, that's a tumor. All right. So when someone says, let's go to McDonald's and get some McNuggets, well, really, that's just tumor meat. So who's to say that if they're not getting a little sample of flesh from you or blood from you, the tissue samples, and they're growing flesh? Who's to say they're not doing that? You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. Just go ahead when I talk, mute yourself so that way there's no echo. But yeah. So did some communicated with Gary, who was head of the Galactic Federation's military squad, and they say they actually know where all these cloning facilities are taking place, and there's hundreds of thousands of clones in each one of these facilities, and there's people all over the world that they've been cloning out for what I guess probably to sell them off world as slaves. But yeah, that's beyond the scope of this conversation. I think we should yeah, move on here if you don't mind, Jimmy. Um, if that sounds like a really good idea. How about let's go explain why the USS Eldridge changed its location from Philadelphia to Montauk, New York? Because that question has been coming up repeatedly in the last interview that we did in the comment section.
James, only thing I can tell you is I'm thinking the radar moved, like it's like, you have an object at point A and you want to go to point B. Now, I believe what happened, they turned the radio dish, the antenna dish, they rotated it. And when they did, it picked it up and it moved it. Now, that's just my thought. I don't know because I was on the Eldridge. Okay. I don't know what happened um, at Camp Hero because I was actually on the Eldridge. Now I do not do public appearances. I'm not like Al Bielek, and I use the name Jimmy Paine. That's an alias name. Okay, uh, but I have no. I'm not trying to write a book about it. There's lots of people who wants to write a book about it. There's lots of people want to make a movie about it. I've had over 3 dozen movies made of just different things that I've been involved in. So when I see that on a movie theater um, screen, I feel violated. So that's why I, I don't I don't do public interviews.
Okay, yeah. Good. Okay, you already muted yourself. Great. So, years ago, I worked with a lady that we remote viewed, or she did, a really bad timeline to see what would happen if the Cabal won, and we had to go 1,000 years in the future because it took a long time for planet Earth to recover from all the nuclear war. But we see these giant fields where there's robots harvesting the wheat, and then we see a cloning factory where they have a clone. Uters. Am I saying that right? The cow uter that's producing the milk. So they just dumped the wheat into the stomach, so they didn't even have the cow anymore. And then the rich and elite were living at the top of these giant spire skyscrapers, and everybody else was just basically a bunch of slaves. And it was basically Klaus Schwab dream come true. So, but that reality, the timeline is diverged around 2011, in November 2011. And that's when we had the splitting of 3D and 5D Earth, and that's why Jimmy. I know Jimmy, you always talk about your nuclear war. I think that timeline dissipated, but anyway, what you're seeing on the screen here is the Sage Tower at Montauk, New York. So these towers were built in the 1960s to communicate with other towers, and I guess they would use microwaves into the atmosphere instead of satellites. So when satellites came, they made all these towers obsolete. But that's what I want to see. Jimmy, you want to comment on any of that before I show the next picture?
Well, those are microwave antennas. And if you stand in front of it, you're going to have swelling in your brain. So what the thing about the Montauk Boys is that when you get around this equipment, they go to talking and they try to put a year down, and then the timeline is distorted because you don't really know what happens until your brain stops swelling. We can time jump, but we have a little bit of brain swellage. Now, since then, they've been able to get a lot of that bad radio waves, that they've cut it down where it doesn't cause as much trouble like it did in the past. So people that claim to have time jump, you know, I'm I know that on Camp Hero there's at least 200 graves, 200 to 225 graves out there, and those are Montauk boys that have been either killed or died or whatever, and they buried them out there in hidden graves. So that's why you don't hear too much about the Montauk boys, and the ones that did survive went to Vietnam. Like I've been to Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos. I've even been within eyesight of the Chinese border. I've been in Hanoi, been in prison in Hanoi. So a lot of the Montauk boys were very few of them lived.
Okay, look at the question. Do you see it? Why is Alexander Cameron not able to tell what time it is?
Yes. Well, it's. I'm going to try to explain it the best way I can. If I took a flashlight and I turned it on the deck of the Eldridge, the light would go out maybe 6 or 7 feet and then bend downward. And if I put the flashlight on a table, I could walk to the other end of the room quicker, just slightly quicker than the light could get to the other end of the room. It's kind of like you take a slinky. When you were a kid, you had a slinky toy, and you found some stairs, and you took the slinky and you leaned it over, and it, went down to the next step, and then went down to the next step, and went down the next step. That's how the light was behaving. Now, as far as not being able to tell time, um, I thought I was on the Eldridge maybe an hour, but when I came off the Eldridge, I had frost on my skin. I had to be given IVs in both arms and both legs. I was dehydrated. Um, my fingers turned black as if I had been frostbitten. Okay, and I was real weak. Um, and as if I had not had any food for about 4 or 5 days. Now, there's been instances where other men have entered a spear. We had another spear that came down, that was retrieved. It wasn't brought back to our timeline. It was brought back into the future, about 500-600 years into the future. And those men, when they entered the spear, they thought they were in there for like 20 minutes. And when they came back out, they had beards, 4 day, 5 days worth of beards. And they had only been in there like 20 minutes inside the spear. So it is a distortion of time. That's the best way I can describe it.
Okay, well, let's move on to let's go. So we're going from the early '60s into the '70s, and there was a precursor to the Montauk Project that was known as the so-called Montauk Boys. Um, but explain about Project Paperclip, uh, maybe Monarch programming, and how they were programming children's minds, I guess, is what they were looking for. I guess in the beginning, boys, and then later on they found girls were just as useful. So, Jimmy, do you have information on this? You can tell us a little bit about the early, before really Montauk Project started.
Well, first off, I'm um, I'm tied in with Project Paperclip. My family uh, is I have relatives in Germany, and I have relatives in Italy. Okay, so when Paperclip, when the scientists in Germany were being brought over to the United States, a lot of them went down to some of them went to Holloman Air Force Base. Some of them went over to um, Nellis Air Force Base. Some went to Plum Island. Okay. Now, by the 1960s, when I came there, I came in like 61, I think. But when I got like old enough, um, I was told that I would be trained as a technician. And what had happened was not all those SS officers could be released. Some of them had to live on the base. Never did get released to the public. Some did. Most did, but some didn't. Now, because of the nuclear test out at Nellis Air Force Base, a lot of those technicians, German technicians, they were losing their hair, losing their teeth. They had, I would say, radiation damage to their skin. They were, you know, they were starting to die, prematurely die. So I was trained to take the place of those technicians, and because I was German, your government, you know, looked at me like a war prize, and so um, that's how I became involved with the aliens at Area 51. But what happened was Captain Oscar Schneider, um, he he was German as well, but he was drafted, or should I said, appropriated and put into the United States Navy during the war, or right at the end of the war. And he was tied in with the Philadelphia experiment. Him and Valiant um, um, Thor was involved. And so what happened, um, he was Captain Snyder, when he went to, when he get in his U-boat, um, he would, go around the Montauk, and people reported seeing that U-boat around there. That was his U-boat, and he would let me out, and I would come ashore by Oyster Pond, Bunker 112, and but anyway, uh, I was taken in and put with other boys down there, and it was kind of like a reform school. Is where you have young, very young men that you don't society has doesn't like. Okay, and almost like a prison like attitude, and it's like being locked up in a jail, and it's like Lord of the Flies. I mean, you have to show who's the most dominant male down in those and inside that bunker. And I can remember having a struggle with um, another Montauk boy. I ended up stabbing him with a shank up in his chest, and fight him off. And so I became like the top guy. I mean, the head of your cell block is what I'm saying. And the Montauk boys, the early ones, they were bred for war. They're very violent, and now because that's why a lot of them was sent off to Vietnam, and and to be a time traveler, you know, uh, it doesn't. You would kill somebody if somebody found out that you were a time traveler. You'd kill them. You do whatever it takes to get the information you need. And I would go back in time or go forward in time. I would, steal stuff, military secrets, stuff like that, and or either monitor um, that particular um, timeline. But I would always have to report back and tell Jack Pewitt or whoever was down there what was going on. So that's the girls. They tried it with the girls, but because the radio waves were their microwaves were so strong from the radar, the boys, some boys could take it, other boys couldn't, but none of the girls could take it. So the girls were basically brought back down to Brookhaven National Laboratories, and when they did work all the bugs out, well, by that time, Montauk was winding down, and they had much better electronics that didn't interfere with your brain. So they did use the women, the females, but it's much later in the program when they're able to refine the electronics, James.
Okay. Oh wow, so many questions. Um, let's see here. We've got this one. Was Hitler given plans for the nuclear bomb and refused to make one, while the Americans were excited to get one? And the Japanese actually surrendered to the United States before they dropped the nuclear bomb. So they just wanted some virgin targets. I mean, I'm laughing, but what's funny is just how we've been lied to. That's what's funny. Not yeah, but yeah. Can you comment about that really quick, Jimmy?
First of all, Hitler did not want to fight the United States. He did not want to fight the United States. Now, the the royal family in England, um, they're reptilian, okay, and they're the ones. Earth is being terraformed right now. All right, you see your government right now is on a witch hunt. All right, you see drugs in the streets. You see all this homosexual stuff and transvestites and all that. All right, this is by no mistake. And so Hitler wanted to kill the royal family because he knew they weren't human. Okay. The United States was just dragged up in it by the British. What happened was someone at Montauk did a time jump, went back in time, and altered the American Civil War. And had the South won the war, well, the South did win the war, but they went back and they altered the timeline where the South lost. And this bogged down the United States. So the United States did not go to World War One and didn't have World War Two. Those wars didn't happen. But because the timeline was changed in 1865, we did go to war, have World War One and World War Two. Okay. So these reptilians, they're here to cause chaos. And when I think of white privilege, there's not a white, there's not a Caucasian in North America that has white privilege. The real white privilege is the royal family in England. And they are the white privilege. And they go around, they stir all this mess up, they cause all these wars. And until the British people can break free, we're going to have this forever and ever. It's a parasite. Um, does that answer some of your questions, James?
Yes, thank you. All right. So let's see here. Let's go. Here's some really good questions from the audience. Let's see here. How about this one from Lee Ram? Al Bielek destroyed the computers on board the Eldridge ship after they were told to do so by the 1980s military to send them back to do this. Is this why the ship was stuck in a time loop or returned then now? What do you think, Jimmy?
Al Bielek did destroy the computers, but there was one glitch. When I got out of the spear that was lodged into the forward deck of the Eldridge, I left the computer on. So what's happening is because the spear is in a time traveling mode, it's stuck. Someone has to go back onto the Eldridge, go into the spear, and dislodge it from the ship. And being that I'm the only one that can fly the craft, it would probably be me. This craft is extremely advanced. I did not even know how to fly it. When I first got in the flight chair, a beam came out of the computer monitor, it hit me in the face, and I went unconscious for a short period of time. I woke up. I had a little bit of blood coming out of my ear. It's kind of like a learning device, is the best way I can describe it. But I can telepathically fly the spear. Now, the Eldridge is true. Al Bielek did destroy the computers, and the ship did reappear. I want to say August the 22nd, 1943. The men weren't on the ship. The men were gone. Okay. But the ship is still teleporting. Now, in the 1980s, 1983, Montauk or Camp Hero was reactivated. All right, it closed in 1980. It was reactivated in 1983, but it wasn't reactivated by the Air Force. It was done by Brookhaven National Laboratories. Brookhaven National Laboratories had the technicians down the road from Camp Hero, and that we were using the Brookhaven power from Brookhaven National Laboratories. They have a super collider underneath the ground, 60 miles down the road from Camp Hero. So I'm aware. I was there when it was reactivated, and I did see the ship on the computer monitor, and it's just like what you see in the movies, the ship teleporting through time and space. But you have to remember the movie, The Philadelphia Experiment, is not really a documentary. Some of it's true, but some of it is just made up. And they do that to protect people like me. It's kind of like a soft disclosure. That's the best way I can describe it.
All right, that answers Jose's question, why they want to let a movie be made. I don't know if you want to comment more about that. We can just move on. So Claymore was mentioning that there's still the Sage radar towers are still being at use, but at lower power levels, and they are actually the ones in Montauk is welded shut. But when the portal opens up, when the Eldridge returns every 20 years, the Sage radar tower moves. So that's how you know the portal is opened. Oh, also there's a Mandela effect too. I think Jimmy, we were actually discussing the Mandela effect. The realities are all switching. I don't know. Do you want to? How about I just go ahead and pause, and if you want to comment, go ahead. Yeah, unmute.
Question for Jimmy: Did E. Howard Hunt tell you the reason they assassinated JFK, and because he wanted to give back the UFO you helped steal? How did you know that was the reason they shot him? Well, first of all, Howard Hunt lived about 15 minutes from where I live. He lived, I grew up around his sons. Okay, Howard Hunt was my handler at one time. Jeff Kennedy did find out that we stole his flying saucer. He told the CIA to give it back, and it wasn't the CIA that the CIA couldn't give it back because, one, the military industrial complex, it was in their hands at that time. And see, presidents come and go. Every 4 to 8 years, they come and go. All right. But we also had problems with Russia and Cuba. And the military industrial complex wanted that craft to study it. Now, um, JFK was going to give a speech when he was in Dallas, and he had wrote out the speech on an envelope, from what I understand, or had an envelope with the speech in it, in which he was going to tell the public about the aliens. And the mayor of Dallas was the guy that was in the car with him and his wife, along with Jackie. Um, when Kennedy was shot, I was on the sixth floor. Well, I was on the sixth floor of the Texas School Book Depository, and there was two men in there. It was Lee Harvey Oswald, and there was a guy, David Morals, was up there. David Morals is who fired the kill shot, and David Morals had an invisibility pack. You put it over your shoulder, you flip the switch, you can't see them. And when I came down the stairs, the policeman came right past me. See, nobody pays attention to a child. Nobody pays attention to a child. They're looking for the gunman. And but Lee never did kill President Kennedy. He fired blanks, is what he fired. And Lee is a true hero. He loved his country. He knew that the future would be messed up, and you're starting to see it right now, that you have a government that's out of control, James. And Lee Harvey Oswald wanted a republic. We don't have a republic right now. I does that help answer the question that's before me?
Yeah, so basically, the aliens is what gave the order because JFK, he was going to tell the public about aliens, and yeah, so that letter that was that he was going to read to the public was, I guess you said the governor had it and he put it in his safe. So when he died, that I guess that's in his estate still, and it hasn't really been released to the public what his message was going to be that day, but. I'm hoping maybe the so-called I don't know if I can say we'll say it's 17, right? So we can't say the letter. Went back in time with the Marvelous Adventures book. Supposedly they went back in time. Maybe they made a clone of them, and Kennedy's with the Galactic Federation now. I don't know. I really, that might be a stretch, but you never know. So. Yeah, someone was saying, yeah, was JFK clone? Is he still alive? Anyway, so all right, I guess we can go ahead and move on here. So let's see here. I got some more questions. We have, is Al Bielek still in the future? Maybe he supposedly, he died. What was it, like 2008? I think he died. You want to comment about that?
Yeah, I want to comment on some other questions, because I think when people ask a question, they need to be heard. One of the prior questions was Jeff Kennedy a clone? I do know they've cloned a couple of the presidents. I don't know if Jeff Kennedy was a clone, but I do know that they clone presidents. There's been a couple of them have been cloned. Now, is Al Bielek still in the future? He figured it out. Al is dead right now. When your body, you're a biological unit, and when you die, you die. We're basically, we have, other words, we can go into the future and we can go into the past, but once our body dies, we become a form of energy, like an orb. Okay. What other questions, James?
All right, let's go into some of the ones that I had. Let's going back into the Montauk project. So the Montauk project was under Project Phoenix, and that's also what the Philadelphia experiment was under. But we also know that Montauk 1.0 ended in August of 1983 when Junior destroyed the facility. So we could, before we actually discuss Junior, maybe you can maybe tell us why, for instance, why did so many children die at Montauk? How did they go missing? And then maybe you could go into the operator chair and how. Yeah, so let's go into the nitty gritty there on the Montauk project.
I want to. There's a question up why some of the children would die at Montauk. Well, first of all, um, it goes back to paperclip. We were expendable. Okay, it was experimental. The the radio waves, like I said, the microwaves made a lot of the men on Eldridge insane. It messed a lot of them up. And when you're tied in with paperclip, um, if I went public, people would be shocked, and I would never be able to work anywhere. I'd be treated like a war criminal, and but I would rather live as a war criminal than to live another day under this society and this government. I do not believe in the United States government. Um, I believe in the SS, and I believe that Germany had a just cause. And you see how they treat Hitler. Well, they're treating your Mr. T, um, you know, uh, just like that right now, So you can make an enemy out of anybody, but Hitler did not want to attack the United States. He was dragged into it, and but a lot of the boys that were killed, once those experiments were over, they would kill them. With me, uh, I had such high level intelligence, and I was in and out of Montauk. I was also working under the extraterrestrials at Area 51. So I'm thinking possibly the tall whites were shielding me. I don't really know. It could be because I can fly different types of craft. I mean, there's hardly any spacecraft that I can't fly. I can pilot it. And I believe that's the skills behind that is what kept me alive, James.
Yeah, so Jimmy was they needed a child to operate some of these Greys craft because the Greys are a lot smaller than we are. But yeah, so maybe we went into a little bit about so a lot of the children would die. Some of them would go missing through the time tunnels. So and a child would be placed onto the Montauk chair, and then they would be instructed to visualize a place in time, and then a portal would open up, and the child would be another, I guess you could say, guinea pig child would be sent through the time portal to grab intel or whatnot, and then they would be brought back. Ideally, the tunnel would have to stay open the entire time. So sometimes the child on operator on the chair would get distracted, and and also the time portals connect not just through time but other alternate realities. We had one lady come on here. She said she went through a portal and they went to some satyr lair with the satyrs, the like goatmen or whatever. They said they were mischievous people. But anyway, so um, we talk a little bit more about that. And also, I wanted you to go into this. Is Colonel John Alexander Jack Pruitt at Montauk. And what I'll do is I'll share my screen because, this is, I think Joseph Powell mentioned this one. So this guy here, you've probably seen him on various UFO shows. So what do you think about that, Jimmy?
Um, I don't, I don't recognize him. I don't know if he's making that claim or not, but uh, Lieutenant Alexander Cameron and Jack Pewitt are two different people. I knew Jack Pewitt. He was a station manager. Um, Lieutenant Alexander Cameron, um, he like I said, I've been to his house, Lieutenant Alexander Cameron. Um, I've even walked around in 1940, 1942, 1943. I've been all timelines. So, um, I mean, I'm just one of those kind of guys that it doesn't matter what timeline you drop me into, I'll adjust to it. Now there's a question of describe how to operate the Montauk chair and can anyone run it? All right. No, well, nobody can. Only specialized people can run the machine. I'll run it before. You have to be careful because you can dose somebody with a lot of voltage, radio waves, and cause damage. The Montauk chair was taken out of a spacecraft. There's two of them. One was at Camp Hero, and the other one was at the Tavistock Institute in England. That's where the British royal family sends their prime ministers and certain people in the military. They go there. They get brainwashed uh, before they even meet the Queen. So that's how the Queen's able to stay in power. At any time a U.S. government official goes to England, um, and I don't care if it's even a president, he's probably going to end up in the chair at Tavistock Institute. Um, the chair basically, if you watch the movie Total Recall, the chair looks similar to it. It's not the exact chair, but it looks similar to it. And the movie Total Recall that Arnold Schwarzenegger stars in, there's some truth behind that as well. I've been to Mars, and you know when you go through that, it scrambles your it gives you temporary amnesia for just a short period. Um, that's the best that I can describe the Montauk chair.
Right. Wow. I didn't know that. So the Tavistock Institute in the UK, were they also running their own time travel experiments as well, similar to Montauk? Because this has actually come up with some memories that I had. I was sent back in time to meet George Washington, and the Americans were trying to arrange things for the Americans. But basically, all the timelines showed that the England lost its colony. So what the UK England was trying to do is sending people back in time to arrange things that are more favorable at the negotiation table. But ultimately, can you comment about that? Where they did the British royal family, whatever it is, yeah, send people back in time to try to change the timelines to benefit them too. What do you think, Jimmy?
Well, first of all, you're very correct. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle should not be in the United States. It's real dangerous to have these British couple here in the United States, and it's real dangerous to have British troops at Nellis Air Force Base. If they need a place to train, Australia, the Pine Gap, all that's desert. Okay, so uh, by law, the CIA cannot spy on you, but the British Secret Service can spy on you. So we have British officers that are doing the spying at camp at Nellis Air Force Base. Um, a lot of the what's going on with the royal family is this: King Charles is not all human; he's part reptilian, and they're not when they abduct somebody. They they've been up in Canada abducting school children. They um, you know they've been abducting little American children, and when you have children coming across the border undocumented, that's like giving the reptilians a free meal. There's no telling how many illegal aliens has been snatched up and brought down into these bases as a food source. Now I'm reading another question from Barbara Lynn. She says, James, does Jimmy know who the person was when they walked by during Charles's coronation? I didn't watch all the coronation. Now, what I did do was watch when they had the funeral, Queen Elizabeth's funeral. And if you noticed, when they buried the Queen, instead of having 6 pallbearers, they had 8 pallbearers. And you also notice the coffin was much, much larger than a regular coffin. And they do that because they shapeshift when they die. You notice they don't have an open coffin where you can look at the Queen. See, there's 4 on each side. Look how long that coffin is. That little woman, she's probably like 5'2", probably weighs about 100 pounds, maybe not that much. And those men are straining to get her, just to carry her. And look at all the symbols on that cloth. It's nothing but dragons. Why wouldn't they put a British flag over that coffin? Because it's not a British subject that's in that coffin. What it is a reptilian. Why would they put that instead of a British Union Jack flag over that coffin? She's reptilian. And I've been around her. Me and Arizona have been around her when she shapeshifted.
So what's in the coffin?
Uh, Repeat your question.
Oh. So if we were to pop open that coffin, will we see like a reptilian in there, probably, or maybe a vril lizard jump out? What do you think?
Reptilian. You would see a hideous reptilian. She sheds her skin like a snake. And what was keeping her alive was adrenochrome. They take a young child, they frighten the child up to get the adrenaline going, and then they brutally murder the child. And they take that blood and they drink it, and that's how they live so long.
Oh wow. Okay, so let's go on here. Next question. So we have this one here. Do you know anything about the reptilian Anunnaki invasion happening in 2025? And according to Al Balick, he said some alien invasion, but never gave a date. So what do you know anything about this? Maybe it's a false flag that they like. I think Randy Kramer talks about in the future. They want to, the next step is the false flag alien invasion to wake the people up.
First of all, I did a time jump to over in Switzerland at the CERN heavy collider over there. There was an accident at the underground laboratory, and when I got there, when I time jumped and went down out by the control room, and there's blood everywhere, all over the walls, it's on the floor. There's nobody that can be found. There's just blood everywhere. I'm talking about even on the ceilings of CERN. It's all over the pipes. So something came out and it grabbed all the people, it grabbed all the scientists and technicians, and it tore them to pieces. All right. And then it dragged the bodies back into, I believe, the portal. Something came out of the portal and killed all the scientists. And when I was in the control rooms, I was seeing lightning coming out of the collider, or I would say it was arcing electricity, sort of like a Tesla coil. It was arcing, and I was able to get in there and hit the power down button. There's a button you can hit with your hand or with your palm and kill all the power to the control in the control room. I don't know what happened to the scientist, but I think that they what they were doing is that they opened up a portal and something came through. James, something it was not human, is all I can tell you.
Okay, so my understanding, CERN was a project to allow the Cabal to escape. There was, I guess they had all these plans. They looked into the future, and they saw like maybe, say, like a 1 out of 4 billion chance that they would lose. So that one chance, they decided they wanted to have backup plans, and CERN was supposed to open up portals and they can escape. But the problem is the portal, at least my understanding, the portal was so tiny, all they could do is just send information back and forth through time to get, so I guess maybe in the future they finally figure out how to open up the portal so something can come through it other than just electronic signals and so on. So can you talk about project, is CERN under Project Phoenix? And also in the future, do they try to fix it again, I guess, because apparently this has happened before. If you looked into the history about CERN, it was shut down for a couple years, and I don't know what the official response was, but apparently something did come through a portal and shut that place down, and then they rebuilt it out. Now they're trying to do it again. So, Jimmy, comment about, is CERN under Project Phoenix? And anyway, go ahead.
Well, first of all, Project Phoenix, that involves Montauk. CERN is not tied in with Montauk. Okay. Now, as far as escaping, they don't need that. They don't need CERN to escape. There's other gates that they can use. You don't need that much power to teleport. Now, going back to CERN itself, if you've noticed right there, see that symbol? All right, but they're looking for an anti-God. They're looking for extraterrestrials. All right, that's what they believe in. All these scientists. And right before they cut the power on, they did a they did a strange dance. They did a sort of like a cult thing, witchcraft.
Oh, I see. Okay, it's my turn to talk. Okay, sorry for the awkwardness here. Okay, so let's go ahead and so we can now let's move on to we can discuss about maybe the Montauk monster. So ultimate. Oh, you know what? Actually, no. Before we get to that, this one here is Preston Nichols a bad person? And why don't you explain who that is for people who don't know? Then we'll go into how the Montauk project, yeah, how it came to an end. Yeah, you're still muted. Hit the unmute button, Jimmy.
Can you hear me
There you
now? I'm sorry. Excuse me. First of all, I've been knowing Preston for many years. I knew Preston prior to him going to electronic school. Um, Preston was under mind control. Him and Al Bielek had a fallout because Preston was doing some things with the Montauk Boys that Al Bielek did not like. Um, I find it troublesome because I was not there all the time. I was back and forth between Camp Hero and a Creech Air Force Base. That's really that's part of Nellis Air Force Base. So apparently the two men had a falling out, but I do know that some of the children down at Brookhaven, they were taking those children, the technicians were, and they was bringing them down to Camp Hero to camp in the park, and they were doing some things with the children that was disgusting. So I don't know what Al Bigley was doing, or I don't know the full scope of it, but it was very serious. And I believe Al did the right thing in, breaking up with Preston and not doing any more talk shows with him. Now Preston was transferred from Brookhaven to Montauk, and or vice versa. I think he started out at Montauk, and then when the test tubes became obsolete, and they're going from test tubes to transistors, and then from transistors to microchips. All right, by the time the computers came around, there was no need for Preston at Camp Hero, so he transferred to Brookhaven. He worked for Diamond Defense Electronics is who he worked for. And he stayed up, he had an office at Brookhaven, and then he would travel back down to Montauk to run wire and video cables and all that.
Okay, so we're so at this point, Junior destroys. We've already gone in. It's like such old news. I think we can just move on from Junior. That was in August, I think 12th, right? August 12th in 1983. Oh, go ahead. You want to say something? Oh, no. Okay. Okay. Well, all right. So then, so now let's go over to Brookhaven. So this, I guess, starts up in, I guess, 1983. I'm not sure, but you can see right here, there's a super collider out here in Long Island. So they need, I guess they wanted to open up the portals. So these children were the Montauk Boys were shifted over there to Brookhaven. And that's where Jimmy and we've had these discussions in private about, that's where he thinks I was participating in Montauk 2.0. And that's actually come up multiple times, multiple readings in the past. And I even go back, if you look in my early videos, I even talk about being part of Montauk 2.0. But there's such almost no information about it on the internet. So maybe Jimmy, what can you tell us about Montauk 2.0 and how were the kids treated better? Because I mean, they've already developed the MK Ultra techniques under the Project Paperclip Nazi scientists, right? So they didn't really need to torture and brainwash just abuse the children anymore. I'm guessing it was all like a science. So what do you know about it?
Well, first off, um, everything at Camp Heroes antiquated. Okay, you're going from test tubes to we're talking two separate facilities here. Brookhaven has microchips that are powered by a nuclear reactor. Um, they It's a modern facility. Okay, it has modern play. It has apartments where the scientists can live at on that base. Camp Hero was basically just an Air Force base with barracks. Okay, um, a lot of those barracks were run down, um, and um, you didn't have the comforts that you have at Brookhaven. So the females, they more or less stayed down in that area there. And you have to remember, uh, when Montauk was shut down, um, everything by that time was being upgraded to computers. So that's where Brookhaven comes in. You don't need a gigantic antenna like you had at Camp Hero. You can do it with a regular cell tower if you had to. Okay. You can also send the signal out by satellite. So you don't really need the big antenna. And does that answer some of your questions? But you have to remember, you don't have the past that I do. I'm directly paperclip. You don't have any of that in your background. And a lot of these other people that are claiming this don't have that in their background. I'm reading a message here that says, what companies benefited from Brookhaven's time travel programs? That is a very broad question. You can see the hardware before you. So every computer, who built the computers, who built the wiring system, who built the buildings, the scientists, they benefited. The universities, that MIT, all those universities, Cambridge, all those universities had professors. There's professors from around the world. You have professors from every country in the world working down there. You're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars just to keep that facility running during the year. That encompasses a great bit of the military budget.
Okay. Did so? I guess they would send people back in time to make sure certain companies and large corporations, maybe certain people, family bloodlines, would maintain their power. Meanwhile, the original bloodline that was working with Saint Germain, the Pacer bloodline, all their money was stripped away, and all that money was sent over to BlackRock and Vanguard, and these are basically predatory corporations that they have programs even off world where they can, yeah, I know we can go into all this, but essentially, yeah. So we've been messed with using time travel in a negative way. So I guess we can maybe explain. So we already know about these multiple programs. How about this? Could you answer this question? So we know about Montauk 1.0 and Montauk 2.0, but how many other sub projects do you think there are? And also the Philadelphia experiment. What do you think, Jimmy, on this question?
Well, you have to remember this went on from 1943 to 1983, and it's still going on now. So, you have the Project Phoenix, you have Pegasus, I mean, it's over a half a dozen or more programs. Um, I mean, there's a lot. It didn't, it, see, when one program would end, then they'll come back and say, well, let's do another program, because different scientists or different physicists had different agendas. Okay. Um, I hope it answers some of your problems, your answers, I mean. But now you don't even need nothing that big. They got it packed down now where you can, if you looked at the John Titor files, and I worked with John Titor, Titor, whatever how you want to call his name, different slangs, people pronounce it differently. Um, he was one of the guys I worked with. Cosmos Girl, Arizona Wilder Watch interview with David Icke. I know Arizona. That's not her real name, but I know Arizona. I've worked with her. She's a good woman. I, uh, in fact, she was on the Nostromo spacecraft with me. Um, and I know David Icke. I've been knowing David Icke since he was 17 years old. But what was your question again for? I got interrupted there, James.
I don't even remember. Maybe we can go quickly into David Icke. Is he like, so I guess he's going out there exposing the reptilians and the royal family. So I guess, do you think like the Queen is really upset at what happened with what David Icke did, or is it maybe they're just, I don't know, they like the notoriety they're getting from David Icke? What can you tell us about David Icke?
Well, he's under mind control. The phone can ring. He can pick it up. It sounds like a fax machine. Uh, he'll go into one of his multiple personality disorders. And then once they get the information out of him, there'll be another ring on the phone, similar to a fax uh, coming out of the earpiece of it. And then he'll say, "Oh, you have the wrong number." He won't even realize it. He's that far under uh, mind control. Now, is David Icke a good person? Yes, he's type of guy that if you're going down the road and you have a flat or something, I think he would pull over, change your tire, help you out. But he's unaware of how deep a mind control he's under. Um, and him and Arizona Wilder, he used Arizona Wilder, which is really sad. I really like Arizona. Why did the Queen like Arizona Wilder so much? Well, first of all, I've been knowing Arizona since, and that's not her real name. That's the name she goes by, Tampon. I'll explain that also. Um, the Queen liked her because Arizona is in the healthcare field. Um, she cares for people who are frail, and the Queen liked that. And when Arizona would go on her period, she would have to take her tampons and put them in a jar, like a mason jar, and she would bring it to the Queen of England. And I've actually seen the Queen of England open up that mason jar, glass mason jar, and pull the tampon out by the string and dip it in a glass full of ice water, like you would take a tea bag and dip it into iced tea and dangle it in iced tea, and then she would drink the the water with the blood, with the bloody tampon in it. And the menstrual blood is, they like, these reptilians like that. It's like an energy drink. It's like a refresh drink. But Arizona Wilder, everything that she said has been true, and she has been treated very, very bad. And uh, she did not want to do the things that the royal family wanted. She was just an innocent person caught up. That's her to the top right there. She dyed her hair red. Um, she she had a nervous breakdown when she was on the Nostromo spacecraft when I took the xenomorph, the alien in, and when they took her off, they had brought her to Nellis Air Force Base, and she was drawing out pictures of the creatures on the notebook. Um, but she's a very good person, and it's just real sad how David Icke used her.
Okay, well, let's see here. I guess we're gonna wrap it up here. What I'll do is I'll quickly go through some of these comments, and yeah. So we have let's see here. Andrew Basaggio went back to see meet George Washington. Barry, so thank you. Jimmy Paine said he went back in time to meet Lincoln, actually, and I think you were there in the Ford Theater witnessing John Wilkes Booth. So I think that what they did at Montauk is they went back in time and tried to stop it, and it turns out that his wife ended up killing him instead because she caught him in the act with a little boy. So I don't know. I think we can move on to that one. So let's see here. We've got without Tavistock, there would have been no World War One, no Bolshevik Revolution, no World War II, and the West would not be hurting headlong into dissolution and collapse. Okay, Tavistock is in partnership with Stanford Research Institute, SRI, and also we've got another message. Social media is run by the Stanford Institute grads. So there you have it right there, social media. And another comment about Max Spears was sent to, says he's bouncing back and forth from Tavistock and SRI. And I think Max might have been also at Montauk 2.0 at Brookhaven with me. But let's see here, I guess. How about I just stop here? You want to comment about any of that, Jimmy?
Yeah, I'll put the first question back up because we went through them real quick. Can you go back to the first question that was on the screen?
Oh, I don't even know if
Andrew.
I don't think I have it anymore.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Mike. Kill your mic. First of all, I know Andrew. I've been knowing Andrew since he was just a young teenager. Um, I liked Andrew, but Andrew has some problems. Um, Now, Andrew was not part of Montauk. He's telling the truth about the time travel. He has gone to we have different stargates, and he did do the time jump. He did meet President Lincoln. But what I'm going to say is this. I've time jumped and gone back to the Civil War. And what happened was Abraham Lincoln was bisexual. And it's well documented that Lincoln would sleep in a bed with another man. See, back then, when they traveled, they didn't have hotels. So, but what Lincoln did was Mary Lincoln walked in on him, and Lincoln's guard was a 19-year-old soldier, and Mrs. Lincoln caught him in the act. And that's why Mrs. Lincoln went insane. She had mental health problems. she couldn't accept that her husband, the president, was bisexual. Now, Lincoln, when I was at Camp Hero, I witnessed the Gettysburg Address being wrote out at Camp Hero, and I'm not sure which Montauk boy did it. I didn't do it, but then again, it could have been handed off to Andrew, but I believe it was handed off to one of the Montauk boys. But they went back in time. They gave the speech to one of the officers who was guarding Lincoln, and Lincoln read the Gettysburg Address. Okay, so what happened was when we found out that the timeline was changed, there was interference going on. There's other time jumpers involved in it. But I was working with John Wilkes Booth, and John Wilkes Booth, he knew that Lincoln was gay. But what happened was at the Ford Theater, John Wilkes Booth shot the president, and he jumped out of the balcony onto the floor of the stage. Now I was working that night as a stage boy. You pull the curtains back, what have you, or up, or whatever whatever the ropes, whichever the way the ropes pulled at that night. But what happened was when John Wilkes jumped out of the balcony, hit his foot on the stage, he cracked his ankle, and he made a short speech. He something about Shakespeare. He read it off, and then he hopped out the back door, got onto a horse, and rode off. And during the confusion, I'm just a stage boy, and I followed the people out of the during the confusion. I just followed the people out of the theater, but I ended up, when I got back to Montauk, I was given some pain medicine and was put back into the time tunnel. And I met back up with John Wilkes Booth because I knew where he was going. And I gave him some painkillers to, kill the pain in his ankle. And we went to Dr. Mudd's house. And Dr. Mudd, looked at him, put his leg into that binded his leg and everything. And we went out into the barn. Well, we had also killed a redheaded Union officer on our way there that night. So we took the body out off the back of the horse and laid it into the barn. And when the Union soldiers showed up, they surrounded the barn and they threw a lantern in there. And when they did that, the barn caught on fire. And I was able to kick off the back panel, a wood beam out of the back of the barn, and me and John Wilkes Booth escaped. And the one that burned up in the barn was the redheaded soldier. And when they pulled the dead body out of the barn, one of the guards said, well, John Wilkes Booth doesn't have red hair. But they ignored it, and they said, well, John Wilkes Booth, was shot in the barn, and his body was recovered, and it was a closed case. John Wilkes Booth came for a while, and he lived in Mississippi for a while, and then went back up to Tennessee. I believe he's buried up in Tennessee in a grave up there. It's either Tennessee or Alabama. I have to relook at my notes, but but he didn't die in the barn. If you were to exhume the body and do a DNA test, then you would see that the corpse is not John Wilkes Booth. The DNA doesn't match.
Oh, wow. Thank you. All right. So let's go through this. We're going to have to. Someone commented as apparently Arizona Wilder is no longer with us. I don't know if you have any information on that. I also have another question. I don't know. Are we in a simulation? What do you think about that? Arizona.
Well, first of all, if Arizona's dead, I'm very sad. I consider her to be a very good friend, and I'm just heartbroken to hear that tonight. I hope it's not true. Now I do know I talked to her husband. Her husband died of liver cancer. Um, he was up in Quebec. I gave him a call and talked to him briefly, and I never did get to talk to Arizona. But I haven't heard from her. Hadn't heard anything about her. If anybody's out there tonight listening to this, please do your research and find out if she's alive or dead. And if she's dead, I want to know where she's at because I want to go put some flowers on her grave. I consider her to be a good woman. Now, the second question is about assimilation. I'm seeing that on the screen here. Um, I don't think we're living in a simulation. I do think that these reptilians are using a hologram to conceal themselves. Um, I do believe that if you watch the movie They Sleep with Randy Piper in it, that's very true. I've worn those sunglasses. I've seen creatures walk among us. In fact, Lee Harvey Oswald's rifle scope is had the same type of lenses in it that the sunglasses had in that movie. And when I looked through Lee Harvey Oswald's scope, I saw entities very near the car around him. So the simulation part, yes, there are things that we can't see, but reptilians can see. We can only see certain uh, light colors.
Can you comment about that? What happened to the people that were in the Eldridge embedded into the hull?
Uh, well, one of them had to have his wrist, was hand amputated by his wrist. His hand was in the wall. Captain Schneider was able to amputate it. They couldn't get his hand out of the metal. Now the other three or four guys that were stuck into the steel, um, the ship the ship went teleported again. It was unstable. Okay. Now, what is going to happen? It's going to go about 800 years into the future to 27 to the year 2700 and something. And the men all die that are left on the ship. Um, the only way to get them off the ship is do a time jump prior to the accident and remove the men from the ship prior to the experiment. And the only way to do that, I would have to go to Area 51. I would have to solicit one of our visitors, one of our extraterrestrials, and cut a deal with them. And if the men were to be taken off, they would have to be brought to a hospital. They would have to be given IVs like I was given, and kept in ICU for for a while. But they can never return to their families. They had to be given be given new names and new identities, and they have to start their life over like I did.
Okay. Yeah, I want to. We really need to get close to the end here. We could either you want to discuss about the what's going on at Plum Island and also maybe the Lake Montauk monster, not the Montauk monster, but the Lake Montauk monster.
Okay, what is going on at Plum Island? Well, Plum Island is a biological warfare lab. Um, the Lyme disease was invented there, uh, and so was other diseases, cattle, diseases that cattle have. Um, I did a little work at Plum Island, but not enough to say that I worked there. I just went there and did a little lab work for a few days. That was to learn how to handle biological weapons, um, you know, how not to get sick, kind of a deal, how to handle the biological weapons. Now, getting back to the Montauk creature, all right, we've talked about Bigfoot. That's my creature, or Junior. Well, there's another creature. Um, has anybody ever watched or the movie Amityville Horror? Well, that's based on a true story. Some things are. It's not a documentary, but some things are true about that movie. Now we had a Montauk boy. His name was Ronald Defoe, but he went by the name Butch Defoe. Now Ronald Defoe, he died, but what happened was he went. His father and his mother. He had two brothers and two sisters, and he took a 35 Marlin rifle and he shot them in their bed. And he claimed that he heard voices in the house. Now, what that was we had a Montauk boy that had a flashback. And the Montauk boys, as I said earlier, they're bred for violence. Okay. But this one was just simply, um, it just got out of hand. And, but he murdered his family. And so the movie Amityville Horror is based on Donald Defoe, Ronald Defoe, excuse me, correction there, Ronald Defoe. And Ronald Defoe died just recently in prison. But what happened was Butch stated, Ronald stated that there was a creature that he saw outside the bedroom window. And the Luxus family that bought the house claimed they saw a creature looking in the window. Now, Mr. Lux was into witchcraft. Uh, he was into black magic, witchcraft stuff, and the Luxus home at 108 Ocean Avenue in Amityville did not have a basement, popular to the movie there. Mr. Lux would hide his witchcraft stuff under a stairs, and it had a red wall to it. So that's how the movie got started up about the whale. It wasn't ever a whale there. He just hid witchcraft stuff underneath the stairs. And but what happened when I had went to retrieve some stuff out of Lake Montauk. We had a couple of our Montauk boys have drowned in that lake, and one of them had a watch that they needed to get back at Camp Hero. So I went into Lake Montauk and found the watch. And as I was coming back up, something grabbed me by both of my ankles. I could feel hands grabbing my ankles, and it pulled me under the water. It was trying to drown me. And I was just, by luck, one of the guys that was on shore had a hook, and I was able to grab a hold of it, and he was able to pull me out uh, with a pike pole. But there's something in the water. It's using the water down there. Yes, I see a question. Jaws movie set, correct. Jaws was filmed in that lake. Um, but that lake is just a few miles from Camp Hero. Um, so there is another creature that is using the waterways between Butch Defoe's old home and Camp Hero. Is using the waterways. And I think Jessica Jones had a guy on her show not long ago was showing a picture. I don't know. I haven't seen the picture up close. But maybe they can come forward with a little more information on this entity that is in the water.
Okay, so yeah, the advice is even if you were, say, in one of these sub projects, not Montauk 1.0, do not go into like Montauk. There's a creature there because they are, yes. So a lot of us, even though we're these other projects, they would send us back in time to Montauk 1.0 and utilize us, yes, in that regard. So we're really, anybody, I'm guessing, maybe most people in Project Phoenix were original at Montauk 1.0 because of the time travel aspect. Okay, so let's see here. I really want to kind of wrap this up. We're really going over time here, but maybe you can answer this question real quick. And then also the alien. I guess we're talking about the Atlantean, and then you can go into this one afterward. Are you going to Montauk? Because I put on a tour that's coming up actually next week. So and that's the last question. So go ahead, Jimmy.
Um, I'm looking at a question that says he followed the alien. Why didn't he get the virus? Well, that's a good question. Maybe I'm immune to it. I've been around different aliens since as a young child. Um, they modified me. I am a clone, and my body has been modified. A lot of the Montauk boys, they were modified as well, genetically modified. Um, so I probably have some type of immunity. Now, what killed those Russian soldiers? They all came down for real high fever. Within a few hours, the whole base was dead. Um, I'm sure that there's probably a Russian is monitoring this tonight. Um, I'm sure that they'll be wanting to know more, but they never should have pissed the alien off. Is um, now the other question was what was the second question after that?
Uh, this one here. Okay, hold on. Lisa.
I'm mixed on that. Going back to Montauk, first of all, I would want I would not want for James or another researcher to be abducted. And being around me at Montauk is it would be very dangerous. And there's also the issue that if my Bigfoot became unfroze, I'm not sure I can be able to control it. He would probably tear James to pieces. Kind of like you have a dog, and then you bring your friend up, and your dog doesn't like your friend, kind of a deal. So I would be leery about that. Then again, it would be my luck that some men in black would show up and put me in a van and carry me off. Um, the only way to really tell who we are is that I stick my arm under um, a scanner, kind of like you do like at a grocery store, but there's a special scanner, and I have a barcode on my arm. Um, so it would not be wise for me to return to Montauk. Um, I would have to go first to Area 51, and they would probably, escort me back. Um, it wouldn't be a good idea to bring you along, James. You'd be abducted.
Oh wow. Okay. Thank you for sharing. So that's it for questions. We're way over time. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. Yeah. The event of the tour that's coming up is between the 9th to the 16th, and I know there was some discussion that perhaps it might even be all the way up to the 22nd because of the leap year. So yeah, well, maybe we can set up some cameras, and so even if we're not there, we can still monitor the location. But yeah, so if you want to contact Jimmy, you can just send me an email over at supersoldiertalk@gmail.com, and we can get that over to him. If you have, if you'd like to learn more about the work I do, you can get a copy of my book over at Neological Tech. There's a link there. You can also get yourself a meditation cube to help you relax. And yeah, so my website was down this past week. It's the first time it's ever been, like, the whole database was deleted. So I'm thinking maybe something in my last video on the brothels might have triggered somebody who didn't like that one, even though I didn't even post on the website yet. But yeah, there's a link on, if you go to Super Soldier Talk, there's a list of people under the MyLab Recovery Network that can help you to get some of your memories back or do some regression work as well. So I think that's about it. That's Jimmy. You wanna throw any last plug in there? Anything else you want to mention?
Yeah, I think the question came up about Arizona Wilder had died. I really like that person to try to find out a little more about it, and to contact James and try to tell him where she's at, because I like to go and put some flowers on her grave. I consider her a friend, and that's all I want to say. And I appreciate people listening tonight. I have just one request: is none of y'all try to sneak into Area 51 or anything like that. When they put the signs up, they say nobody is allowed beyond this point. You need to respect the signs and respect the extraterrestrials out there. They don't want to get sick, and you don't want to get sick either. And there are ways to communicate with them, but it's best not to try to show up and make contact with them directly.
Oh wow! So let me sorry, get this off. Cosmic Earth, thank you. Okay, yeah. So maybe I'll just do one little thing. I'm sorry. I guess we're gonna go over time a little bit. Yeah. So here I am over here. This was at the main gate near the little alien inn, and I guess Jimmy, you were commenting. This is Laura Pritchard, by the way. Um, she has her own YouTube channel if you want to check her out. But you said that don't go to the little alien inn because there's cameras and microphones in that whole motel there. But I think I got some pictures of little alien inn. Oh yeah, there's Misha Johnson. I guess you know Misha, Jimmy. You've been on her show. She's has her own talk show out of Las Vegas, but she's since retired. Yeah, they're in my book there. Anyway, so there's the entrance. So, yeah, we didn't go across the gate because it's very illegal and you can get thrown in jail. But Jimmy has commented that if they actually pull you into the base, they'll experiment on you. So that's why it says expresses a desire. Yeah, do not do that. So anyway, so I'm gonna stop that. Okay, Jimmy, last comment. We'll call it. Yeah, I lost a lot of weight. Yeah, since then. I started juicing. That's why I look different. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Well, the getting back to Area 51, I think everybody wants to know, but I've been out there with the tall whites, and they don't interfere with the government. So if you're thinking that it makes a difference, it's not. They're not going to interfere with the government. They stay neutral. They have their own world, full of problems. They don't need another world. And stop listening to all these new age preachers, and when they go talking about ET and all that, and they're not gods. They're beings just like us. They may look different or be a little different on their insides. But it all goes down to like Europeans meeting the Indians. It wiped out all the Indians. So that's the reason that it's not good to be around extraterrestrials. They're basically a biohazard, and they also consider you a biohazard. There's individuals that are specially trained to interact with them, and they need their space just like you need your space. And but if you enter Area 51, you give up you give your rights up, and it's not worth it, people. It's just not worth it.
Thank you, Jimmy. All right. Enough of that. We'll call it a day or night wherever you may be around the world, and we'll see you next time. I'm actually have another interview tomorrow, so it won't be too much longer. So good night, everybody, and we'll see you on the other side. All right. So let's go ahead and hit this. Please consider supporting Super Soldier Talk by purchasing your own Neo Meditation device. Your Neo Meditation device will help you reduce stress, integrate trauma, enhance intuition, enhance clairvoyance, and enhance creativity. Get yours now at www.neologicaltech.com.